Hi, I'm Cynthia Gold. I'm the tea sommelier at L'Espalier Restaurant in the Mandarin Oriental, Boston. And today we're going to do an introduction to tea and tea making. So we're going to start with a black tea. So we have our pot nice and warm. You probably hear people talking about a teaspoon per cup of tea leaves, and that's talking about your average sized tea leaf. We're going to put 2 teaspoons of tea into our pot. That was a little scant. Now this is the traditional method of steeping in a pre-warmed pot, loose leaf, and straining into another pre-warmed pot. But not everyone finds that convenient. You don't need to go to a commercial tea bag in order to have the convenience of a tea bag. There are some wonderful products on the market. This is referred to as a tea sack. There are a lot of different brands, and you can make your own tea bag. Now, assuming we do have our tea loose here, then we would want a strainer in order to strain it into our final serving pot. Or it could be strained directly into your teacups. So whatever is convenient for you. And again, I want a pre-warmed teapot, because for black teas, fully oxidized black teas, you want your water as hot as possible, as close to a full boil, 212 degrees. And if you put that hot water into cold china or porcelain, you'd be amazed how much the temperature is going to drop. Now, you can always use a timer if you want. I tend to steep by taste, but your typical tea leaves, when you purchase them, what they're going to tell you is a suggested time. But you can also use to your own personal preference. For black tea, it's typically 4 minutes at that water that was first brought to a full rolling boil. So after you've waited your 4 minutes, you want to take your serving pot or directly into your cups and strain your tea. If we wanted instead to steep a green tea or a white tea, those should be cooler water. So you do not have to worry about preheating your pot, because you want cooler water anyway. So our nice cold pot, we can use that tea sack that I preloaded. You can put your tea directly into there. You can use any sort of built-in filter. But we would not want water as hot as what I have to boil. So you can catch the water temperature coming up before it's come to a boil. But if that's not convenient for you, what you can do is put your water, so in this case it's too hot for a green tea. What the Japanese do is take another cold china pot or porcelain, pour it from the hot pot into the cooler pot to be ready to cool your tea. But a very convenient way, if you don't want to wait for it to cool or use another pot, is just to put a splash of room temperature water into your water, which would now be around 175 degrees. And then our green tea goes in here. Now, many people think they don't enjoy green tea, but in all likelihood, they just haven't had it steeped properly. When you use boiling water on a green tea leaf, you're literally burning the leaf. That dulls the flavor. So if you have green tea that is very dull or heavy tasting, that probably was steeped at too hot a temperature. If your green tea is bitter, then it was probably steeped for too long a time. Green teas, typically you want about 175, but you don't need to measure it. Just cool that water a little bit. That's lightly steaming water, and it would usually be about 2 minutes, but it depends on the particular green tea, and the label will give you guidelines or go by your personal taste. If we would like to finish our teas with any additions, a black tea like this is many people choose to add milk to. Green tea you would not typically add milk to. Sweetener could go into either of those by your personal preference. And you may have heard that in England they would often put the milk in first before the tea is poured into the cup. And you might have been wondering, why is that? Does the tea taste different if you put the milk in first? Well, the reason for that historically was that fine china and porcelain came over from the Orient, just like the tea did, and it was very delicate and very expensive. And if you put hot tea directly into your porcelain, particularly if the room temperature was very cool, and without central heating, these rooms often were, that could be too much of a strain on the fine china. So the habit of putting the milk in first was simply to buffer the heat of the tea when it was being poured into the cup. Well, thank you for joining us for this introduction to tea. I hope these tips have helped to show you that steeping fine teas, loose leaf teas, is really as convenient as any tea bag. It's quite easy. You don't need to stress over water temperature when you can cool your water with just a splash of water. You don't need thermometers or anything. And as far as whether you decide to put milk, sweetener, honey, lemon in your tea, there are certain traditions that are followed in certain areas, but in the end it's what you enjoy. Don't let anyone tell you what you should be drinking or how you should be drinking, but you would be amazed how easy steeping the perfect cup of tea is if you have the leaves that you have chosen, hot water, and a convenient teapot.